And also Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist. Thanks to both of you for hopping on before your Friday and your weekend. Kurt, I'll start with you. The White House has consistently stayed quiet on Hunter Biden's legal issues as this process has played out. Is that a mistake? Does the president need to address this, especially now that his son has been indicted?
Well, I think at some point there's going to have to be a little bit more from the White House. But I think that there's really two issues here. There's the Hunter Biden gun charge, which in itself, politically speaking, I don't think is going to damage the president one way or the other. That process will play out however it plays out. Then there's the part of Hunter Biden that is kind of at the focal point of the Republican impeachment proceeding. That's stuff that the White House is obviously going to have to address, be aggressive on, try to push back on what they perceive to be disinformation or lies or conspiracy theories. They're going to have to be very active on that. But they're going to have to treat each one a little bit differently because they really are very separate situations. One of them is politically potent, the stuff having to do with the impeachment. The other one, the gun charge, that's going to play out however it's going to play out. I don't think anyone in America cares.
Yeah, I know that President Trump and also James Comer pointing out it's the one crime that you can't link President Biden directly to. Lauren, Republicans criticized the original plea deal, that plea agreement, as a sweetheart deal. Going back to yesterday, is this indictment enough to satisfy those who felt that Hunter Biden was getting unfair preferential treatment? Or do you agree with the James Comers of the world who say this is an unsatisfying small start?
Well, that's what's really tough about this, Marky, because the more Republicans talk about Hunter Biden and how this isn't fair, it sort of clashes with what they said, these indictments, and what might be very serious charges that the DOJ is entirely in the tank for the Bidens and they give them preferential treatment. So it's a little bit of a tightrope walk because they're trying to send the message in campaign season that the DOJ is corrupt, but the DOJ, according to Democrats, has saddled Hunter with some very serious charges. Yeah. The other part of this, and I agree with Kurt on the marginal political effect of the Hunter Biden things. The evidence for that is really in the polling surrounding it. And that especially pertains to these charges of possible corruption. Over 70% of Americans think Hunter Biden profited from his father's office. That includes, by the way, 53% of Democrats. But when you ask about Joe Biden and whether he behaved illegally, that number drops to about 40%.
Yeah, I can't imagine a worse week for the sitting president of the United States. Kurt, focusing now on the president, Republicans this week, as you know, launched that impeachment inquiry into President Biden. So far, though, they've yet to provide any concrete evidence linking the president to his son's business dealings, anything illegal. How does this indictment impact the impeachment effort?
I don't think it really impacts it that much. House Republicans are going to do what they're going to do, regardless of what happens with Hunter Biden, with the federal gun charges. And I think Republicans have kind of put themselves in a tough position. My former boss, Republican Darrell Issa, said just yesterday that evidence directly linking President Biden to his son's business dealings has yet to materialize. Now, that's Darrell Issa saying that, who's a staunch Republican, who has been the former chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who led the probes on Benghazi and Fast and Furious, held Attorney General Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt. And when Darrell Issa is out there saying, yeah, the evidence, we haven't found it yet, that's pretty damning that they're moving forward with an impeachment inquiry without actually having the smoking gun. When I worked at the Oversight Committee, we had a rule: do not make statements that the evidence does not back up. Republicans have completely abandoned that philosophy, and they've set expectations so high that the threshold for the evidence to justify that rhetoric isn't there.
Yeah. And Lauren, Republicans have cited what they call a culture of corruption surrounding the president and his family, right, their business dealings. But does this indictment do enough to prove to the American people who will go to vote next November that the president should actually be impeached?
I mean, the culture of corruption term is very specific. It's chosen for a reason, which is that it's sort of all encapsulating, but there is no specific smoking gun yet, which Republicans do need eventually. Now, President Biden has lied about these things at least twice, having, met or heard about Hunter's business colleagues, and then whether Hunter did anything wrong. These are questions he's going to eventually have to answer. But again, the issue is that Americans, when we ask them about this, are very critical of Hunter Biden, but on their list of priorities, Markey, the president's investigations into his possible corruption and Hunter Biden are very, very low on the list. And that's the same with investigations into Donald Trump, by the way. They're about 18 and 19 on a list of 20 issues Pew asks about every election cycle.
Yeah, well, we'll follow this to see if the White House says anything, if President Biden says anything, especially before he reaches another eventual debate stage sometime down the road. Dr. Lauren Wright, Kurt Bardella, thanks so much as always.